folks. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever and whenever you may be listening from. Welcome to our podcast, my dearest PhD pals, where we explore the history of mathematics and mathematics education. And it's me again, Sir Eric D. Hovillano, your moderator for today's episode. So, for today's episode, we will be exploring a fascinating question that historians of mathematics continue to debate: the handmaiden of faith. To what extent did religious institutions accelerate or sometimes constrain the development of mathematics across different pre-modern cultures? So historians of mathematics increasingly emphasize that mathematical knowledge does not develop in isolation. Instead, it emerges within a specific cultural, religious, political, and institutional contexts that shape both the questions scholars ask and the kinds of knowledge they produce. So, to explore this topic, I am joined by my three colleagues from our PhD and educational major in mathematics education program. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our panelists. Our first panelist, Sir Jonathan Baraga. Say hello, sir.
Hello.
Well, he's a fellow graduate of MA in Mathematics Education at Waco University, a former DOST scholar, and currently a deputy mathematics teacher. And our second panelist, the one and the only Sir Jong Basol. Say hi naman dyan, sir.
Hello po.
Well, he is a graduate of MA Mathematics at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and also a deputy mathematics teacher and currently teaching at Batanes National Science High School. And last but not the least, our third panelist, the only woman in our podcast today. Happy Women's Month, Mom Jaden Legaspi Lopez.
Oo.
Also is a graduate of Masters in Mathematics Teaching at Batangas State University, who will help us examine the mathematical traditions in the pre-modern East Asia, particularly in China. So before we dive into our historical cases, let me first ask our panelists quick questions. So what does the phrase the handmaiden of faith mean in the context of mathematics? Sir Jonathan, may we start with you?
Well, the phrase handmaiden of faith refers to the idea that mathematical knowledge historically served religious purposes, whether it is in astronomy, calendars, architecture, or ritual life. However, when historians examine the historical record more closely, the relationship between religion and mathematics appears far more complex than simply mathematics serving religion.
Thank you for that, Sir Jonathan. Now, Sir Jong, would you like to add something to that idea?
Yes. Well, in many societies, religious institutions actually encourage mathematical inquiry by creating intellectual communities and practical problems that required mathematical solutions.
Well, that is a very interesting perspective. Now, Mom Jaden, how about your thoughts?
So, in other contexts, religious institutions mainly preserve existing knowledge, while new mathematical developments emerge in different social or political environments.
Well, thank you for that, Mom Jaden. Those are excellent ideas coming from all of our panelists. Now, what becomes clear even from this short exchange is that the relationship between religion and mathematics is not a simple story of conflict or support. So instead, it varies across historical contexts. Now, to explore this further, we will be examining three pre-modern societies. First is pre-modern American civilizations. We have also the pre-modern Europe and the pre-modern East Asia, particularly in China. So let's begin with pre-modern American civilization, particularly the Maya civilization, where mathematics was closely connected to religion and cosmology. Sir Jonathan, my question is, what stood out to you about the relationship between religion and mathematics in this context?
Well, talking about that context, One fascinating example of mathematics closely connected with religion can be found in pre-modern American civilizations, particularly among the Maya. Mayan society developed a sophisticated bidecimal or base 20 number system, which allowed them to perform complex calculations. One of the most remarkable aspects of their numerical system was the use of a symbol for zero, which played an essential role in recording large numbers and calculating calendrical cycles. Mathematics in this society was deeply connected with astronomy, cosmology, and ritual practice. Mayan priests carefully observed celestial bodies, such as the sun, moon, and planets, in order to construct ritual calendars that guided religious ceremonies, as well as the agricultural cycles. These observations required precise numerical calculations and systematic record keeping, which meant that mathematical knowledge became closely tied to religious authority and cosmological interpretation.
Oh, that's fascinating, Sir Jonathan. So, if I get it right, the connection between astronomy, ritual life, and mathematics really shows how knowledge systems were integrated in Mayan society. So, Sir Jong, from your perspective, would you say that these religious practices usually stimulated the development of mathematical knowledge rather than limiting it?
Yes, definitely. The need to track celestial cycles and ritual calendars required accurate methods for counting time and predicting astronomical events. Because of this, priests and scholars had strong motivation to develop reliable numerical and observational systems. So rather than restricting knowledge, religion actually created the conditions that encouraged mathematical development.
Oh, that's a really important point. Thank you so for that, Sir Jong. Now, Ma'am Jaden, what aspect of this period stood out to you the most?
Well, what I found particularly interesting is that mathematics in Mayan society was not simply theoretical knowledge. It was used to interpret the structure of the cosmos, which people believe influence agriculture, ritual ceremonies, and even political authority. Historians today also caution against interpreting Mayan mathematics merely as primitive step toward modern mathematics. Instead, scholars emphasize that it should be understood within its own cultural and cosmological framework.
Thank you for that, Ma'am Jaden. That's a very crucial historiographic reminder. So, in this context, mathematics truly function as a handmaiden of faith, helping societies understand the relationship between cosmic order and human life. But when we move to another region, the pre-modern Europe, the relationship between religion and mathematics appears somewhat different. So let's take a closer look at that case. So, Sir John, could you help us understand how religious institutions influence mathematics education in this pre-modern Europe?
Well, you know, in pre-modern Europe, much of the formal education took place in monasteries and cathedral schools, which were closely connected to the Christian church. Mathematics formed part of what was known as the quadrivium, which included arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. These subjects were considered essential because medieval scholars believed they revealed the order and harmony of God's creation. Classical works such as Euclid's Elements remained central to mathematical instruction, and monasteries played a crucial role in preserving and transmitting these manuscripts across generations. So, in this context, religious institutions helped maintain the continuity with earlier mathematical traditions.
That's an important point. So, in many ways, religion in this period functioned as a custodian of classical mathematical knowledge. But, Sir Jonathan, did mathematical practice in Europe remain mainly within these religious institutions, or did it begin to evolve in other social contexts as well?
Well, that's a great question, sir. While monasteries and cathedral schools preserve classical knowledge, New developments in mathematical practice began to emerge through institutions such as the Abacus schools, where merchants learned practical arithmetic. One key figure in this transformation was Fibonacci, whose book Liber Abaci, who introduced the Hindu-Arabic numerical system to Europe and demonstrated its advantages for commercial calculation. In fact, as trade networks expanded across Mediterranean and beyond, merchants needed efficient methods of accounting, currency exchange, and profit calculation. This created a growing demand for practical mathematical skills. So, in Europe, we began to see mathematics gradually shifting from a primarily scholastic subject toward a tool for commercial and economic activity.
Wow, so that transition, that shift is really fascinating. So if we look at a bigger picture, religious institutions in Europe help really preserve classical mathematical knowledge while expanding economic activity later helped stimulate new mathematical practices. So, Sir Jong, when we compare this with the earlier example of pre-modern American civilizations, what stands out to you about the role of religion in shaping the mathematical knowledge?
Well, one interesting difference is how religion shaped mathematics in different ways. In pre-modern American civilizations, religious cosmology directly stimulated mathematical inquiry through astronomical observation and ritual calendars. In Europe, however, religious institutions were more focused on preserving classical knowledge, while later innovation came from commercial and economic needs. So even though religion was important in both contexts, the institutional role it played in mathematical development was quite different.
Well, that comparison really highlights how mathematical knowledge develops within the specific institutional structures of each society. And that brings us to our third context, where mathematics evolve within yet another kind of institutional environment. Now let's turn to pre-modern China, if you allow me. Ma'am Jaden, how did mathematics develop in this pre-modern China?
While in China, mathematics was closely connected to the needs of state administration rather than religion. The imperial government relied heavily on mathematical knowledge for practical tasks such as land surveying, taxation, engineering, and infrastructure projects, also calendar construction. Because of these responsibilities, mathematical competence became important for official preparing for positions in the civil service bureaucracy. One of the most influential mathematical texts in this tradition is the Nine Chapters on the Mathematical Arts, which presents systematic procedures for solving practical problems involving measurement, distribution, and calculation. Unlike the Greek mathematical tradition, which emphasized formal proof, Chinese mathematical texts often focus on algorithmic methods and practical problem solving, reflecting the administrative priorities of the state.
That was so fascinating. Ideas from the pre-modern China. So in this context, mathematics seems less connected to religious institutions and more tied, I mean, to the bureaucratic structure of governance. So would it be fair to say then that the mathematics in China functioned less as a handmaiden of faith and more as what one might call the handmaiden of governance?
Yes, and that's the good way to describe it.
Hmm.
Was valued because it allowed the state to manage complex administrative tasks across a large empire, whether measuring land, organizing taxation, or planning engineering projects. Mathematical knowledge became an essential tool of governance.
Thank you for that, Ma'am Jaden. Now let's go to Sir Jong. When we compare this with the earlier cases we discussed, particularly pre-modern America and Europe. What stands out to you about this Chinese example?
Well, what stands out is how the institutional driver of mathematics changes across societies. In pre-modern American civilizations, mathematics was closely tied to religious cosmology and ritual calendars. In Europe, religious institutions helped preserve classical knowledge before economic expansion created new mathematical demands. But in China, mathematics was primarily shaped by the administrative needs of the imperial state, which explains why many Chinese mathematical texts emphasize practical procedures and applied calculations.
Well, that comparisons of yours really highlights an important insight from the history of mathematics. That mathematical knowledge develops not only from the intellectual curiosity, but also from the institutional needs of the societies that cultivate it. Now, listening to the three historical cases that we discussed, there's a clear pattern that begins to emerge. It seems that mathematics often flourishes when institutions, whether be it religious, political, or economic, create a strong demand for quantitative knowledge. Now, Sir Jonathan, would it be fair to say that religious institutions sometimes generated the very problems that pushed mathematics forward?
Yes, I think that's a fair observation. In several societies, religious practices required precise forms of measurement and calculations. Historians often point to the Islamic scholarly world as another example, where determining prayer times and the direction of the Mecca encouraged developments in astronomy and mathematical calculation. So, in many cases, religion did not restrict mathematics, but instead, it created a practical problems that scholars tried to solve using mathematical methods.
Thank you for that, Sir Jonathan. Medyo nag-stop ako kasi very interesting yung sinasabi ni Sir Jonathan. That's an important point. So it suggests the religion could sometimes act as a driver of mathematical inquiry rather than an obstacle. So, Sir John, when we look specifically at pre-modern Europe, how does that comparison help us understand the role of institutions?
Well, in pre-modern Europe, the role of religious institutions was somewhat different. Christian monasteries and cathedral schools played a major role in preserving classical mathematical texts, particularly works like Euclid's Elements. But later on, mathematical innovation began to expand through commercial and economic contexts, especially with the rise of merchant arithmetic and the spread of Hindu-Arabic numerals. So in Europe, we see a shift from religious preservation of knowledge to economic demand for computation.
Well, that transition is really interesting. Why? Because it shows how the institutional driver of mathematics can change over time. So, Ma'am Jaden, if we compare that with pre-modern China that you discussed, do we see yet another type of institutional influence?
Yes, definitely. In China, mathematics was closely connected to state administration rather than religion. Mathematical knowledge was essential for tasks such as taxation, land, measurement, engineering projects, and calendar construction. Because of this, texts like the nine chapters on the mathematical arts focus heavily on practical problem solving methods. So, in this case, mathematics function less as handmaiden of faith and more as what we might call as a handmaiden of governance.
Well, that comparison really brings our discussion together. So across three different societies, mathematics did not develop in isolation. Instead, it was shaped by the institutional priorities and intellectual traditions of those cultures that cultivated it. So let's proceed to pedagogical aspect of this. As mathematics educators, what might these historical examples suggest about the way we think about mathematics education today? Sir Jonathan, would you like to start that conversation?
Yes, you know what, sir? One important lesson is that mathematics was rarely developed as an isolated or purely abstract discipline. Across the societies we discussed, mathematical ideas often emerge from real needs, whether religious, administrative, or economic. So, for mathematics education today, this reminds us that students often understand mathematical ideas more, but they see how those ideas are connected to meaningful concepts and deep thought.
That's really a valuable. Mathematics becomes more meaningful when learners understand why it was developed in the very first place, right? So, Mom Jaden, how do you see this historical perspective influencing the way we teach mathematics today?
I think these historical examples also remind us that mathematical knowledge is shaped by culture and society. When students learn about how different civilizations used mathematics to solve real problems, whether in astronomy, in governance, or trade, it helps them see mathematics as a human intellectual achievement rather than just a set of formulas. In that sense, integrating historical perspectives into mathematics education can help students appreciate both the practical value and cultural richness of mathematics.
All right. Thank you, Mom Jaden. So before we end our discussion, I'd like to hear a brief final reflection from each of our panelists. Based on the historical cases we explored in this episode, the pre-modern American civilizations, the pre-modern Europe, and the pre-modern China, to what extent do you think religious institutions accelerated or perhaps constrained the development of mathematics in the pre-modern societies? That's our biggest question. So, Sir Jonathan, may we start with you?
Well, looking at the historical examples we discussed, it seems that religious institutions often accelerated mathematical development when mathematical knowledge was necessary for religious practices, such as the astronomical observations or the construction of ritual calendars. However, the extent of this influence depended on how religion interacted with other institutions in society.
So it depends, on the interaction of the religion to other institutions. Thank you, Sir Jonathan. So, Sir Jong, what would be your final reflection on this?
Well, I would say the influence of religion was mixed. Religious institutions played an important role in preserving and transmitting mathematical knowledge, especially in places like pre-modern Europe. But at the same time, new mathematical developments often emerged when societies faced economic, commercial, or administrative challenges that required more advanced calculation methods.
That's a very interesting perspective. Thank you so much, Sir Jong. Now, Mom Jaden, how about your final thoughts?
From a broader historical perspective, mathematics seems to develop most strongly when societies create institutional demand for quantitative knowledge. In some cultures, that demand came from religious practice, in others, from economic activity or state governance. So rather than seeing religion as either helping or hindering mathematics, it may be more accurate to see it as one of the several institutional forces shaping mathematical development.
Wow, that's a very good point. Thank you so much, Mom Jaden. And thank you very much for those insightful reflections from our panelists. So, to conclude, this relationship between religion and mathematics in pre modern societies cannot be reduced to just a simple story of conflict. My dear folks, as we have seen across in our discussion, religious institutions sometimes accelerated mathematical problems, say, for example, by generating problems that required precise calculation and observation, while in other contexts, they help preserve existing knowledge while new innovations emerge through economic or administrative needs. So from the ritual calendars of pre-modern American civilizations to the preservation of classical learning in pre-modern Europe and the administrative mathematics of imperial China, mathematics developed within the institutional frameworks of the societies that cultivated it. So these examples remind us that mathematics is not simply a collection of abstract ideas. It is a human intellectual tradition shaped by culture, by institutions, and the practical challenges people face in different times and in places. Do you agree with me, panelists? All right, thank you so much. So, and now we would like to turn this question to our listeners, our dear PhD pals. In your own humble opinion and based from this discussion, to what extent do you think religious accelerated or religious institutions, I mean, accelerated or perhaps constrained the development of mathematics across pre-modern cultures? Let us know your thoughts and perhaps we can continue this conversation in our next episode. Available pa kaya ang ating panelists? Of course, they're always available. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, our sincerest thanks to our panelists for sharing their insight. Thank you, Sir Jonathan, Ma'am Jaden, and Sir Jong Basol. This has been Sir Eric D. Hovellano, and we are looking forward to have you again as we continue exploring the history and philosophy of mathematics education. Until next time, until our next podcast, we are hoping to be with all of you guys again. Thank you so much.